the universe itself is also in a state of evolution. By evolution, what do we mean? The universe, as you know, is definitely not static. The question arises, is it eternal? Is it changing constantly? Or is there no change at all in the universe? The first important point we need to understand that Allah says, not for naught does He create anything. That in the universe, even the universe itself has been created for a fixed purpose and is not in vain. The reference for this is Surah 46 verse 3, and I quote, "We have not created the heavens and the earth and all that lies between them, but with a purpose, according to a prefixed measurement." Now this very important verse raises some interesting points. Number one, Allah says clearly that the heavens and the earth has been created for a purpose. There's nothing random and there's nothing meaningless in creation. Everything has been created with a specific objective, with a specific mission and a specific purpose. And over millions and billions of years, they've been running out their course as computed and programmed. The second point, but Allah says, it has been created according to a prefixed measurement. And here Allah is telling us that everything has been programmed and runs according to law. It has been fixed. This is the so-called the taqdeer, the predetermined nature of things. Hence, because of law and prefixed measurement, we see order and harmony in the universe. We've discussed in previous programs the perfect symmetry, the harmony, the complete absence of any kind of discord or chaos that you find in the universe. Everything runs according to a fixed plan. The next reference I would like to give you all is Surah 55 verse 26 and 27. We've discussed now, insofar as the evolution of the universe, number one, that the universe has been created with a purpose. The second point, the universe is not eternal. It will end. It has got a finite time to it. And this Allah says in the Quran in Surah 55 verse 27, and I quote, "All that is there will perish, except the face of thy Lord, full of majesty, bounty and honor." Very briefly what Allah says, that Allah is the only absolute existence. There will come a time when this universe is going to be destroyed. It will revert to its state of non-existence. It will be annihilated. Nothing except Allah will exist. That is a promise that is given to us. It will be destroyed, and the only thing that is going to be left is Allah. And then, of course, Allah says elsewhere, creation will be repeated. Again in Surah 28, verse 88, Allah says, "All will perish, save Allah's countenance. His is the command, and unto Him will ye be brought back." So the next point we realize with regard to the universe is that number two, it is not eternal. It has got a definite time frame, and it will be destroyed at some time.
I think the point is made as well that this universe didn't come about by chance.
That's right.
And without any purpose. And this is the beauty of it. Allah says that it all follows the divine decree. This is inscribed in Allah's law, that He creates for a purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, the plan goes on. This process of evolution goes on.
It goes on.
It's never static.
That is definitely true. There is nothing random. There is no chaos. There is only harmony and obeying of law. The third point with regard to the evolution of the universe, where Allah says in the Quran, in Surah 21, verse 104, "There will be a day when we shall roll up the heavens like a recorder rolls up a written scroll. As we began the first creation, so we shall repeat it. It is a promise binding upon us. Lo, we are able to perform it."
From this Quranic ayah, we are told that Allah will one day roll up the heaven like a recorder rolls up a scroll of written paper. This is a very beautiful description given to us. This is a description of a roll of paper as a scroll, a scribe that writes, and he rolls the scroll, or a recorder that records any event, and he rolls it up. Now this is, Allah says that one day He's going to roll it up again. Now we find at this point in time, it's like description of an artist unrolling a scroll. And as he's opening the scroll and opening it, he reveals more and more and more.
That's true.
And we find that this is what Allah says that in this universe He has been doing from the time of creation, is revealing each time more and more and more and more. And in fact, there's a beautiful verse that describes this in Surah 55, verse 29, where Allah says, every day is a day of new splendor in the universe for your Lord. And we find that what He says is that every day there's new things being added and there's new beauties in the universe. And if you think about it and we look at science, we find this is an absolutely established fact, that if you study the cosmos and you study the skies, they find that there are times that stars are being created, stars come into being, stars are being destroyed. This process of creation and destruction is going on in the cosmos. There is no static at any point in time. And
Even
beautiful description of the scroll being unrolled.
It's
very
very
beautiful.
nice. That's true. But even every day in the universe, even in our earth, children are being born, life is being created. That is indeed splendor every day, even to take it at a very basic level. That we can identify and see. I mean, the miracle of birth. Every day we see life in different forms manifesting itself in the plant kingdom, in the animal kingdom. So indeed, when Allah says every day is a day of new splendor, there is new life, there's new miracles that are being performed all around us. So I think that is, as we mentioned, Allah says that there is a time when this universe is going to be, like you said, rolled up like a scroll. And again in Surah 14 verse 48, Allah says that on that day when the earth will be changed into another earth, and the heavens will be changed also. Basically the message is that this heavens and earth have got a finite period. There is no question about that. There is going to be a process, there is going to be a time when it is going to end, and a new creation is going to come about.
Look, perhaps this verse is so beautiful, it requires a lot of going into in depth, and we shall discuss this in a bit more detail to understand what the implication of this verse is. The Quranic ayah, Surah 21, verse 104, which says that one day Allah will roll up the heaven like a recorder rolls up a written scroll. As we began the first creation, so we shall repeat it. It is a promise binding upon us. Lo, we are able to perform it. Now, what does this mean, rolling up this universe like a recorder? Let us see, does it make sense to our understanding of as we know the universe? What it actually says, Allah says, is just as a scroll of paper has been opened out completely, then it's going to be rolled back to its original point. Now let us consider what science says about this universe. We know that this universe started from a point of infinite density, the Big Bang, so to speak, and it's been expanding ever since. And even at the present moment of time, we know this universe is expanding. Now the scientists have found out that this expansion of this universe is being slowed down. There is a brake being applied by some force slowing down the expansion of the universe. And they postulate that this reason for this brake is actually the dark, unseen interstellar matter which is present in the universe. And we notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran refers to the existence of this interstellar matter 1400 years ago, and they've only found it out in this century actually, which is phenomenal. So they find that it is this interstellar matter that exerts the major portion of gravitational attraction which is causing the slowing down of this expansion.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, just to refresh the memories with regard to interstellar matter, we mentioned this last week, but because it's such an important point, the Quranic verse is, we created the heavens and the earth and what is between. You'll remember at length we described and went into detail what is between the heavens and the earth, and that is the interstellar matter that we are referring to now, which, as you said, is exerting this gravitational attraction.
And this is mentioned in a number of Quranic
of
verses,
verses, yes.
as we highlighted last time. The other factor they feel which may be responsible for slowing down the expansion is the existence of what they call black holes. But whatever it may be, The fact of the matter is that the universe expansion is slowing down. And what this means is that at some point in time, it's going to stop expanding. Now, what happens when it stops expanding? The general consensus is at this point, if the gravitational attraction of the matter that is present in this universe is greater, it will cause the universe to recoil and is going to start contracting. And this is the totally reverse of the Big Bang. So once it reaches maximum state of expansion, it's going to start contracting and start going in the opposite direction. In other words, getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is very beautifully explained by a recorder of a scroll that has been unrolled to its maximum and is now being rolled back to its original state. And this is exactly what the scientists say is going to happen. That the universe is going to be rolling back down to the original point of creation. And you can imagine the scenario. And this is very beautifully described in the Quran in a number of ayahs. Of course, you can, if you just read the 30th part of the Quran, which describes aptly the destruction of this universe and the coming of the Day of Judgment and the various phenomena that are associated with these. And we see that all these things are not just stories or just to frighten us, but these are the realities which we shall see. But let's just take it, for example, looking at an overall picture. What happens when this universe starts contracting? Now, when the universe starts contracting, we have the reversal of time and we have the reversal of space. Everything is going to start coming back to its original point. In other words, the galaxies have been receding and moving away from each other. Now they're going to stop and they're going to start moving towards each other. And initially they're going to be moving towards each other at a slow speed, and they're going to gain momentum and travel at tremendous speed towards each other. And what's going to happen is that they're going to collide and give rise to cataclysmic explosions and destruction of stars, of galaxies, and of everything as we know it. And you can imagine the turmoil and the destruction that's going to be present at this time. And this is what the Quran very graphically explains when it describes the Day of Judgment or the life to come. And this very beautifully explains how scientifically it is a reality. And when we think about it, what happens when the universe starts contracting? We find the gravitational force is going to be converted into thermal energy. This is the reverse of what happened when the universe was created. And what's going to happen is, from the universe being in the state of coolness as we know it, it's going to start heating up.
Yeah.
The temperature is going to rise. Temperatures are going to go to phenomenal heights again to what it was. And of course, Quran talks about the oceans boiling. It talks about the earth being molten red. This is a reality. This is what the scientists say is going to happen. That this universe is going to heat up. And you're going to find widespread destruction, widespread chaos, with the galaxies, the stars coming into each other and crashing and destroying each other. And we find that this is going to continue while this process of contraction is going on. And ultimately, it's going to come back to the point at which it started. In other words, the universe would be what they call the big crunch, as opposed to the Big Bang, where the universe is going to collapse smaller and smaller and smaller with destruction, with the destruction of matter. Now, as we said, this is going to be the reversal, where we're going to get solids being converted to liquids, liquids being converted into gas, gas being converted into the molecules and the basic constituents of matter and antimatter, and ultimately the destruction of all matter and back to the infinite point of energy as we know it. So from this we can see that we will come back to where we started off, where there will be nothing, there will be non-existence, and only Allah. As Allah says, only His face will abide. There will be nothing else in this universe. And then, of course, what happens then? Now, science doesn't have answers, but they can try and postulate what may happen at this point. Some are of the opinion that it will reach this point of infinite density, and there will be total annihilation of matter, and that will be the end of it all. There is also a larger school among the scientists which believe that this universe is going to contract and come to a point of near infinite density until it cannot contract any further. And then it's going to explode again, what they call the big bounce. And when it explodes again, it's going to cause a recreation of the universe back from energy into matter.
So can this continue endlessly according to science?
Look, according to some
Contracting, expanding and contracting.
Absolutely. Some of them say this can carry on to infinitum. In other words, it's been going on for infinite. But of course, this is not. There's no evidence to suggest that. And of course, Quran is not of that opinion. From Quran, what we understand is that when this point of contraction comes about, when everything will be destroyed, as Allah says, on that day, everything will be destroyed. But this will not be the end of it all. We are going to have the big bounce, as it is said by science as well, where we're going to find at this point in time, as Allah says in Surah 14, verse 48, on that day, when the earth will be changed into another earth, and the heaven, they will be changed also. Mm-hmm. So Allah says also in the first one, when He says, He will roll the universe like a recorder. As we began the first creation, so we shall repeat it. Now this means that it will not be destroyed, but what's going to happen here is that when it shrinks down to this point of infinite density, there's going to be a bounce, where we're going to get the creation of a new universe. As Allah says, He will create a new universe, an earth that will be changed. It will not be the same earth that we know of today. It will not be the same heavens. That the Quran is very explicit. It will be that which you know not of. And then we have the creation of what we know is going to be heaven and hell. So this is a very scientific understanding of how this heaven and hell will come into existence from the destruction of this universe as we know it. And further we are told that when this universe is created, this universe is going to be an infinite universe. The present universe as we know it is what they call a closed universe. In other words, it has expansion to a point and is going to contract again. Now here, this universe is going to be an open universe. In prime, it's going to expand for eternity. And it is in keeping with the Quranic description of heaven and hell. Allah says that the universe, that heaven is going to be infinite. So this is now scientifically our understanding of how this universe is going to be created after the destruction. And we know that when this heaven and this hell is created in the second stage of creation, the so-called big bounce, as science calls it, this will be an infinite universe, and this will be when man will be brought back to give accountability on the Day of Judgment. Then he will be raised up again in this new universe to be accountable for his deeds, and then assigned to heaven or hell, which is going to be infinite. Of course, the nature of this universe, Allah alone knows, but we know for sure it is not the universe that we know of. It's going to be different.
I think it's a good point you made, that according to, as you explained, from a scientific point of view, when the universe starts to contract due to the gravitational pull of the intergalactic matter, the temperatures are going to start to rise. And I think that just needs re-emphasis, how Quran describes the heavens, the oceans boiling. I mean, can you imagine what kind of energy is required to boil an ocean, or the oceans? So it's actually very graphic to show that the actual core temperature of the heavens and the earth is going to start rising, and it's perfectly in keeping with what science tells us with regard to the changes that are going to occur as the Day of Judgment approaches. So it is very, very interesting to look at the Quranic description of the Day of Judgment, what's going to happen, and see that it's perfectly in harmony with what science says.
In fact, many people will think that it is just allegorical, but it's not necessarily just allegorical. If you take the Quran in its literal meaning, it describes the condition of the universe at the time, and it beautifully is in keeping with what we understand from science. I mean, even scientists who are non-Muslims are forced to admit that this will be, the end of the universe. So, this is very beautifully described by Quran. A day when we shall roll up the heaven like a recorder rolls up a written scroll. As we began the first creation, so we shall repeat it. It is a promise binding upon us. On that day when the earth will be changed to another earth, and the heaven, they will be changed also.
As you mentioned, even the non-Muslim scientists are admitting that the odds of this universe having and not having a divine creator is extremely small. I just want to quote one of these scientists, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Hawkins. He says he was forced to admit that the odds against a universe like ours emerging out of something like the Big Bang are absolutely enormous. Trying to say that just to attribute the existence of our universe from the Big Bang as a random explosion giving rise to our universe it's like insane. It's insane to even imagine it. Even another physicist, by the gentleman by the name of Freeman Dyson, he says, the more I examine the universe and the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe, in some sense, must have known we were coming. So you can see that how they're playing with words. The universe knowing, they are basically saying it but not quite admitting.
They don't want to admit the existence of a creator, although they can see before them that it cannot be explained in any other way. But being die-hard scientists, they got to stick by the...
They're admitting it but not quite admitting it. So even like you said, they always attribute nature, they attribute other forces, but they cannot quite understand.
Absolutely. I think another very beautiful quote that we had is by George Smoot, which is an astrophysicist. In fact, he was involved in the COBE exploration, which discovered a phenomenal discovery which confirmed the Big Bang theory, in fact, which he called the wrinkles in time. In fact, they do not admit the existence of a creator, but this is what he says in his conclusion in that book, after all the findings that he has made. And this is a man who has been out in space and seen it all. Mm-hmm. He said, it seems the more we learn, the more we see how it all fits together, how there is an underlying unity to the sea of matter and stars and galaxies that surround us. Likewise, as we study the universe as a whole, we realize that the microcosm and the macrocosm are increasingly the same subject. By unifying them, we are learning that nature is as is, not because it is the chance consequence of a random series of meaningless events. Quite the opposite. More and more, the universe appears to be as it is, because it must be that way. Its evolution was written in its beginnings, in its cosmic DNA, if you will. When a cosmologist perceives how the laws and principles of the cosmos begin to fit together, how they are intertwined, how they display a symmetry, indeed, how they imply that the universe must be expanding, must be flat, must be all that it is, then he perceives pure, unadulterated beauty. We are awed by the ultimate simplicity and power of the creativity of physical nature and by its beauty on all sides.
But he's saying,
this is short of saying
what is he saying?
Subhanallah.
Now, what is he saying? There's planning has been written. Who's doing the writing? If he's saying there's law, if there's design, who's the designer? Who's the planner? They're just coming short of just admitting the truth.
Yeah, Jazakallah. That brings us to the end of our program for today. And from me in the studio, Yusuf, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And Abdul Kader, Assalamu alaikum till we meet next week.